We're going to be doing the interfacing and collar here. You're going to pin your interfacing to the wrong side of the collar. You need to cut the interfacing corner diagonally. That just helps reduce the bulk. Then we're going to clip up to the dots. So in the picture here, the hashtags represent interfacing. What you see underneath there is the fabric. So here is my pattern piece along with my two collar pieces and my interfacing. Just one section gets interfaced. So go ahead and take your interfacing, clip off the corners. That is to again reduce the bulk when you turn your collar right side out. Head to the iron, fuse that onto this piece. I am going to go ahead and do the next step, which is a 5/8 seam along the notched edge. And then it tells me to clip up to the dot. We previously marked these dots here, so we're going to go ahead and, if you can't see them, just carve your pattern piece and mark them again. But I can see mine there, so I went ahead and clipped right up to it, and it opens up and releases some tension there. Next step is to go ahead and press down along that stitch line, or head over to your iron, probably get a better press in there. Trim that to 1/4 of an inch like the pattern says. And then you're going to take your other collar piece that does not have the interfacing, place these two right sides together, and we're going to pin the short ends and the long unnotched edge. So I'm going to pin right along here. As we sew this, we're going to be sewing down the short ends across the bottom and up to the top, leaving free the notched edge. So go ahead and sew this at a 5/8 seam allowance, making sure to do a nice pivot in the corner. Once done that, clip up your threads. We're going to trim off the corners. Don't go too close, leave a little bit by the stitches. And then use your large scissors here to go ahead and trim your seam down to 1/4 of an inch all the way around the seam that you have just sewn. And we're going to go ahead and turn this right side out. I have this fun little pointing tool. If you have something somewhat pointy that you can push into the corners, it helps get those corners out a little nicer. And at this point, I'm just kind of finger pressing that seam open. You will want to head to the iron after you do this and give it a nice sharp press right along that edge. All right, then we're going to go ahead and pin this collar onto the garment. We've already sewn our shoulder seams. So you're going to take your scissors, and the stay stitch that we have here allows us to clip up to that stay stitching. And this is a curved neck edge, so we need to clip and put enough clips in here to relieve any tension, so that basically we can put what is a straight collar into a curved neckline. So you do this by lining up the back notches, and here I'm pinning just the top layer. I'm not pinning, I'm leaving that free right there where the collar is. The clip that we put in earlier on the collar should match up with the shoulder seams of the shirt. And then you just keep working this around, making sure you're keeping everything really flat. And more than likely, you're going to have to add probably a few extra clips here and there to get it to open up. At the end here, I noticed that that needed one more right at the very end of the collar. So I did that. A lot of adjusting back and forth. If you feel like it's not fitting, add a clip. Work it until you feel like it has a good fit. When you start basting, you're going to be sewing through all these layers at 5/8. You should basically be stitching on that stitch line that you put on the collar. So go ahead and work your way along here. The trick is to look underneath and make sure that you're checking that you're not grabbing other chunks of fabric. There's a lot of layers there. So feel the fabric before you sew and make sure there's not a second layer that you're tucking. All right, when you get to the area here where the fold is down on the collar, you need to no longer be sewing on all the layers. So basically you're going to take that little fold edge, see how I flipped it out of my way. Again, make sure everything's straight underneath, that you're not catching any seams. And then here, continue on your 5/8. And then when you come back to the point where all the layers are again, you're going to come back onto the fabric where you're sewing through all layers of the collar. All right, so all layers, leave this part open right here. I actually it caught a little bit, so I just released that with a stitch. And that was just done with a baste. You're gonna later stitch it, so basting there is just fine.